As we all know, that Waves has 200 plus pieces of IP that have been developed over the last 20 years, to be exact. And that IP doesn't get any better. You know, one thing that's very important to us in the recording studios is that, without a shadow of a doubt, that when we go to use these devices, these plugins, we have to make sure that they absolutely 100% work. You know, the idea of someone performing and you're trying to grab a performance and something like that goes wrong in terms of the plugin is devastating, right? So you also have the same thing, which is what's made DiGiGrid so fantastic as a live product, is that they are in the same situation. You know, when you go to the show, it better work. But now we are all a part of this technical revolution. This is actually a very exciting time on the renaissance of chipsets, you know, moving at a speed that is actually not even measurable. And it's a very, very, very exciting time. And it's infiltrating into all parts of our lives, right? It's infiltrating into the consumer part of our lives, where we're rolling with a Galaxy 3 or an iPhone, you know, where they have an Asus, an Acer, a Lenovo, an Intel device, whatever it is. It's all interconnected. And what's happening now, I'm observing, is that people want it to be portable. You know, when you hear the record, they want to go to the show and hear that same thing. And this is the beginning of really stepping back from DiGiGrid for a minute to what they showed you a little earlier. That was the beginning of taking the studio products, plugins, Waves, and putting them into a live environment. So when you go to see the Katy Perry show at the amphitheater and you sit and listen, you're like, that sounds like the record. That's the delays that were on her voice. I mean, you're not thinking like that. We, as musical, you know, undereducated people, understand and can make those observations. But the consumer has to feel like that's the show. That's exactly what's going on, right? So basically, now we have the studio talking to live, and live talking to studio, and they're feeding each other as we preempt this beginning of like wanting to take what's happening creatively on both sides and present it to the world. But now we've got another situation upon us, which is, as this technical revolution blows up, and now we're faced with, like, gee, there's Ableton Live, and there's, you know, DigiDesign, and there's DiGiGrid, and, you know, there's this manufacturer and that manufacturer. There's PC, there's Apple. You know, as a record maker, let me move this for a minute to the studio, right? Because one thing that you'll find as you become educated with this whole DiGiGrid presentation is it feeds everything. You know, broadcast, film, record making, live. It's not one segment. It's every silo. But let's move to the studio for a moment, because that's primarily what I do. One of my pain points, one of the things that's difficult for me as a record maker, right, is now that we have what I call LE operators, people who are making records in not professional environments, right? They're being made in every platform you can imagine. Some people are using the PC, some people are using an Apple device, and some people are using all these different platforms that are available to us in terms of all the different DAW systems, right? But then they come to the record studio with all these pieces of music that are developed in all different kinds of platforms. And you kind of scratch your head like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm on, for instance, Pro Tools, and someone's got something from Cubase, or someone has something from Ableton Live, and, you know, how am I going to make it talk to it, right? That's exactly what this does. With one cable, you plug it in, and it's like, hello, I speak French, I know you speak German. This cable between it takes your German and makes it French now, let's go. That is astronomically amazing. For me, that's like mind-boggling, that I don't have to be concerned now that the bass player has done a lot of work and he wants to bring it to my session and add it to a record that maybe we're even already mixing, that we're already deep in, right? So what this is going to afford all of us in our individual silos, and again, it's way too much, as you can see, to describe in 2 seconds, but just understand that now this technical revolution that we're in the middle of, do understand that anything is possible, right? So going back to what I said earlier about people wanting to hear the finished product beautifully, that also transpires in the studio in terms of what's being created, right? So for me, it's always been a little bit of an issue like, gee, you know, I really wish I could put these reverbs, these delays, this kind of compression, whatever it might be, right? And I can't do it because I'm stuck with what the power rate of the engine has. This changes all that. If I want to put 100 plugins, 50 plugins, 20 plugins with no latency, because obviously this has to work live where there can't be any latency, it's not a problem. So the world's your oyster with this. That's a very sort of simple, inspirational perspective, non-technical, but I'm extremely excited what this is going to do for all of us. Thank you.